So welcome to another fantastic Faena Rose event. Tonight, we're gonna have a conversation with the one and only, let's see, he wears many hats, collector, curator, entrepreneur, publisher, father, husband, and one heck of a guy, and friend, I will say that as well. So, the one and only Larry Warsh. Larry, tell us a little bit about what we're gonna discuss tonight, but don't give away too much.
We're going to talk about art, life, vision, collecting, passion, how to see art in a different way, some of my experiences in collecting and being a compulsive collector that I was.
And we're also going to talk a little bit about his Keith Haring collection, Basquiat collection, Cause, Weiwei, and a little bit more. So, as we like to say, strap in, get ready for another fantastic Faena Rose event. So let's get into tonight. Normally this is the part where I read the bio on the talent comes out, and then we have a conversation. We're gonna change things up a little bit tonight because I know that we sort of marketed this about Larry's art cars, and we're gonna talk about his art cars, but we're gonna talk about a lot more than just Larry's art cars, if that's okay with you guys, because I think we're going to peel back the layers of the onion with Larry. He's an incredibly interesting, dynamic person whose title requires a lot of hyphens. And I want to talk about everything he's done and everything he's doing and kind of give you an inside look at that. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome my friend, Larry Warsh. Welcome, my friend, please.
Thank you.
All right, so it's funny, we sat down, Larry and I sat down, we had lunch this afternoon, and we were talking, and I said, Larry, you're doing, every time I sit down and I catch up with Larry, who I've known now for almost 20 years from my New York days at the Core Club. He was a Core Club member. And we developed the friendship then, and we stayed in touch. I've been in Miami now for 12 years. Every time I sit down with him and we catch up, he's just doing a more amazing project, a more interesting project. He really has his finger on the zeitgeist of culture, of art, and so much more, casually saying, oh yeah, I'm going to see, Kid Cudi in LA next week. I was just with Travis Scott. Oh yeah, Quavo was just seeing my art car collection, like just out of nowhere. And he's always doing some really, really interesting things. I mean, he is a collector. He is a curator. He's a publisher. By the way, best stocking stuffers. The holidays are around the corner. What else? And he's an entrepreneur. And so we want to kind of have a conversation and talk and touch upon all of that, if that's okay, Larry.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank
you for being here, everyone.
So before we get into all that, because let's kind of give us a little bit of a look into Larry Warsh. You're from?
New York City.
Born and bred?
Yes.
Okay. And a few New Yorkers in the audience, just one or two, I'd have to say about 80%. But yes. Okay, so Larry, what were you like growing up? I'm curious.
I was a
there he is.
very
yes.
hyperactive child.
What age is this, by the way?
And that's, I think, around 10, 11-ish.
Okay.
11-ish.
We're going to get into this, but okay, so.
And had a lot of energy. And I got focused on art at a young age. I had an uncle who my mom used to send me to just to get rid of me for every Friday. And that uncle was the uncle that happened to collect paintings. So he used to take me to Sotheby's, actually, at a young age. And that led to an interest that...
What age?
Well, around 12,
Okay.
going there. And then I started focusing on art and business, or understanding I like art, or I like some of the financial areas of art, or some of the historical parts of art. And, I was pretty much intense about all those areas.
And you went to school for?
I went to business school in Manhattan, Baruch, took one art course, had an internship at a PR firm whose primary client was Sotheby's. And that was interesting. Then I was hired by Sotheby's at around 2021, working on a marketing project. That was very interesting. Pointed me well as well.
And you worked for Sotheby's as a client for the agency or on your own?
On my own. So they hired me to work on
Okay.
a project, then how to sell third-rate impressionists to American Express cardholders. So I did that for a year, and that was with Ogilvy and Mather at the time. So a lot of work, and then Sotheby's, the owner, and the agency started bickering about how to split the money. So they never launched the project, but that was really interesting. And that led to understanding some of the audiences that they were attracting and approaching, and that was museums. And that led me to get into museums, museum goers, and what that audience meant. That led to starting a magazine when I was around 21, called Museums New York. So I put out 3 issues. I just couldn't do it, and only went back 15 years later to do it again, and did that for 10 years. And then I sold that in 2004. But that was a magazine that dealt with inform and educate about art. It was in 5 cities, pre-digital, and that was a chapter.
It was sort of editorial plus museum guide to that city, or no?
Yeah,
Right?
articles came with tickets. It was the whole thing then. And
So when you first started the first round, you did only 3 issues, and it just wasn't working for you, and you kind of...
well, I was 21, and interest rates were at 15% or something like that. It was kind of hard.
Money wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
And so then you left that for 10 years, and then you always had an idea you would come back to doing that?
Yeah, it was in me. I wanted to do it again, and because I thought it was a good idea to do.
And in the meantime, those 10 years, you were doing a little bit
10 years, I was starting to accumulate art and living downtown and focusing.
This is the 80s?
I was living on Astor Place, which was a whole time then.
That
And,
was Astor Place in the 80s
Yeah.
was sort of the epicenter of downtown New York art scene, wasn't it?
yeah, I was fortunate to walk outside and see the world of culture, craziness. And so I stumbled onto the Fun Gallery and Patty Astor. And I stumbled on to Keith Haring and the works of Jean-Michel Basquiat. And that moment and that time, and Kenny Scharf, and that was really happening then. And it was kind of obvious to me that that was a special time in that time. So I began to focus on those artists and start to buy them in depth. And that was a little before most people really.
Well, you've always had sort of your finger on the pulse of what's next and not interested in just seeing ahead, but seeing ahead and around the corner, right? I'm going to come back to the Keith Haring because I think there's a really, obviously, in 2 days from now, a really important sale at Sotheby's of 31 of your Keith Haring subway drawings, right? We'll come back to that. But I want to talk, so you started to get into, if we were to fast forward a little bit to the early 2000s. When I met you in 2007, 2006, you were big on contemporary Asian art, right? Chinese, pardon me, in particular. What got you into Chinese contemporary art?
My father-in-law,
Who's local, right?
who's local right here, I was watching what he was doing. He was a active collector. He was a pioneer. And what struck me then was the pricing of Chinese contemporary art, important painters and photographers, as against to Western prices and important artists. There was a wide gap. So like billions of dollars for West and Chinese over here. That was around the early 2000s. So it hit me again that there was something off, so I began to study that and go to China and started to accumulate Chinese painters and got really into that market and to that area. And I thought I thought China would be a big country one day. It was big, but look what happened. It was pre-Olympics.
Yeah.
And that led me, so that was really interesting. And China is, what we know about China today, and actually there's no real contemporary art coming out of China anymore. It's pretty much closed down in terms of creativity, in terms of, what a country wants about an artist, what artists can do. But that led me to my friend Ai Weiwei. And I started looking at his works around 2002. And he was, although he's a Chinese artist, he's a global artist, so he had a different profile. And actually, what's on the screen is a project I did. We did the zodiac heads, large size, small gold size, and that was successful and toured to many museums.
Including the PAM.
Including
the large
PAM.
format sculptures were on display just outside of the PAM for a good period of time, right?
Yeah, and that was, and he's an amazing human being. He's a very vocal person, as we know. But for me, Chinese art and the 80s is really analyzing sort of the present time and what art can be bought in that time and how to think about it in the future and why it would be important, and try to get a sense of that. Because art, the art business and the art market and art history are quite different, and you really can't follow the art market. You have to follow art history and try to understand some of the things that go on.
You also, I don't know if you all saw the documentary on Ai Weiwei, Never Sorry, I believe it was. You were also one of the producers of that, right?
Yes, that was the time when Ai Weiwei was detained. I hired the director, amazing Alison Clayman,
Yeah.
won many awards. And that timing of that movie really enlightened many people about Ai Weiwei in terms of who he was and what he stood for.
We're just looking at some of the
Yeah.
works. Genius. Do you want to talk really quickly about this zodiac signs series?
That's an interesting body of work. He made that references the destruction of the Beijing Palace by the West, by the British and the French, and it was looted. And these heads were part of a water fountain, and that project did very well, being viewed in many places. I would say that's probably one of the most successful public art projects ever, because there's so many sets, and there's one at Princeton, and one at LACMA, and various other institutions. So that became sort of an iconic emblem of Ai Weiwei.
Can we talk for a moment about Lawrence? But before we go into Lawrence, the publishing side of your entrepreneurship, right? Obviously, you have this side of you. You're a content guy like I am, except I'm not a publisher. You are a publisher. You've done these ism books that are, well, I'll let you explain them a little bit better.
So it started with Ai Weiwei when we did a big project, the Zodiacs at Princeton. And so I said, why don't we try to do Weiwei isms? And that went well. And that led to Basquiat, Haring, Virgil Abloh, Damien Hirst, Pharrell. And so these are interesting books. They're small books. It's all about the voice of an artist. It's not a coffee table book.
No photos.
No photos. One photo.
It's all quotes.
So these books really tell you about what the artist stands for, what they say. Most books, there may be 100 books on Keith Haring now or 80 books on Keith Haring, but very few of them will talk about what the artist stands for, what they say. And I thought these books would be interesting, and now we do 4 a year. And this is a great one that just came out, is Marina Abramovich. Kind of nice color. And amazing woman. Mm-hmm. And we have a Shepard Fairey coming out, Marilyn Minter. We're going to be doing Duchamp, George O'Keeffe, Alexander Calder. But these are all about artists' voices. And I don't think many people really know what an artist says. We know what artists' works look like.
Right.
So that's sort of what that's about. And Princeton is a great place, great publisher, great house.
I take it this is more passion than financial project for you. Because
yeah, this is about...
in publishing, that I can't imagine there's a lot of money to be made.
They cumulatively sell now.
Right.
They've sold over a couple 100,000 copies now, because every year they just sell. They're pretty much interesting artists and figures. So it's a labor of love.
Labor of love, just one of your many dynamic sides. Let's talk about another very successful project that you did with Lawrence Weiner, right? This is his hopscotch.
Yeah. So this project, Lawrence was an amazing person, amazing artist. He passed a couple of years ago. So that was a project. He made a car for me. We got to be friendly. I used to go to his house and smoke and drink with him every week and hang out. And that was like a lot of fun. He got ill in the meantime. But that was a project, if you go back one slide.
Sure.
That was about positive thinking and self-actualization. So we collaborated, and the words you see: exuberance, energy, happiness, vision, visualization, enlightenment, spontaneity, serendipity. It's about how do you catch these words, how do you catch them and find your goal, find your destination. So we created a hopscotch, sort of a pathway for youth. And that's all about move yourself forward in life. And now that's in 8 languages. And it's been to, maybe a dozen museums, including Pam.
Yep.
And so that project was really interesting to me, and is interesting to me, because it's about, how do people use their life and what they do. And it's encouraging, again, self-actualization. So that's a really important project for me.
I hear you're also, before we go to this, I hear you're also big, you're big and bold on cause.
Yes. Brian Donnelly.
Donnelly?
Brian Donnelly. Actually, he's in Europe tonight launching a new AP watch. So Brian Cause, I was turned on to him around in 2013. And again, that was an artist that was popular, but for me, one of the reasons why I really took a liking or an aggressive compulsion to buy his work, it was clear that he's sort of an artist of a decade. He's a good artist, but he's more than a painter or a sculptor. He's a figure that represents a culture. And I think when I bought art, the criteria is not about what it looks like, maybe what it costs, but it's all these other variables that help you sort of feel comfortable about why this artist will be important. And I did apply that to Basquiat and Keith Haring, because there was a certain energy in the 80s that you felt, and I was right there feeling it. And again, with Brian, it was sort of obvious to me why he would be important and why he's important. Most artists, or many artists, they do great work and they have a moment or two, but they don't have longevity. And it was so easy for me to see Brian's longevity.
So let's segue to Basquiat and the Basquiat Notebook series, which was also very different exhibition and collection of yours, and very successful, right? It also was at the Brooklyn Museum and the Bass. That's 3 exhibits that you've had at the Bass from your collection in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Within the last
that's
10 years. A lot of people may not know that. Tell us a little bit about your affinity with Basquiat and how the whole Notebook series came about.
So again, going back and forth to Astor Place, going back and forth to that moment, collecting Jean-Michel's work, paintings, and all kinds of things. So my good friend René Ricard used to come over to my house. He was an important figure at the time, brilliant man. And he turned me on to Jean-Michel and actually took me to the band members and some of the friends of Jean's. And I saw the notebooks there. And again, it was clearly obvious to see how important these journals would be, but no one really wanted them. They were just words. And this was, again, before the Jean-Michel's star had risen. So when I got these notebooks, I had put them away for many years in my closet in a shopping bag, basically. And but one day I took them out, and then we did some museum shows, a big show at the Brooklyn Museum that toured to 5 locations around the country. And now these notebooks tour around the world, from LVMH to Albertina to, we're going to have them in Korea. But they become really important bodies of work where the paintings, many of his paintings come from these works. And it's there in 4 languages, in Mandarin, Japanese, French, and English. And I'm quite proud of that project. And I feel right now I'm working on a museum concept with a big mural plus the notebooks to try to create a destination. Anyone could buy a Basquiat painting, you just need money, right? But to create a museum or a destination that will have longevity, that to me is interesting, and that's one of the goals, a Basquiat museum.
I want to come back to that because I think you are a blue flame thinker on many things where you have these big ideas and these big concepts, and museums are something that are interesting, experiential museums are something that are really interesting to you, and not just Jean-Michel. So let's come back to that in a moment. Here are some more photos of the exhibit.
So that piece,
there's a lot there.
That's a mural. So my thoughts are combining the mural and the couple hundred sheets of the notebooks, creating a destination like the Rothko Chapel or like the Monet at MoMA, where people would come see it. So next year in Korea, we're creating a whole temple within a Basquiat show, which will be a big room. And that will be sort of a model of what I want to try to do. Where it will go, not sure. Some private museum, some country, but it's about leaving a destination, a Basquiat destination, on words, and he's all about words.
Right. Which leads us to, in 2 days from now, as we talked about, Sotheby's is doing an auction of 31 of your Keith Haring subway drawings. Tell us a little bit about this collection of yours. You started collecting these subway drawings when?
Mid-'80s. So this goes back, I go back and forth to Astor Place, I go back and forth to the 80s. I probably had hair then, and and being a compulsive person in terms of acquiring things and desiring things. So in those days, Keith Haring subway posters and drawings people had them, but not many people cared about them.
Right.
So over a period of years, I decided to accumulate them because they're really the most important works by Keith Haring. Keith Haring, you know, in terms of his first public art project, thinking art is for everyone. And so it was, you know, the symbols and the drawings are really important. They're his early drawings, his early imagery, and really important, and they don't really exist. So I went around collecting them, building up a body of work, and we made this book, 31 subway drawings. And this was the show we did at the Brooklyn Museum. And
What year was that?
that was in 2012.
Okay.
And that was one of the first times that had so many subway drawings in one room in one show. So independent of that show, I've been lending them out to museums for all these years, including MoMA, the Barnes collection, and many other museums around the world, actually. So, but this body of work is really important, and usually my name is not associated with these things, but this collection is really interesting, and Sotheby's created a subway station in their building with turnstiles. I think it's one of their biggest shows ever. And putting the subway drawings in situation with large video screens of trains and actually chairs, subway chairs. You know, all it's missing is you know, all kinds of people coming in. But basically, it is quite successful. It's open till tomorrow around 1 o'clock, and they have a sale on Thursday.
Why,
And,
just how did this
that's,
come about? What made you decide, it's time to part with these works where you've had many of them since the 1980s, correct? And
Yeah.
some of them into
Yeah.
the 90s, but most of them you collected and you purchased in the 80s.
Well, what I realize now, it's not about owning everything. It's about collecting and about a passion of accumulating. So after all, these do live in storage. They do go to museums. But it comes a point, at least with this body of work, that I think it's most interesting that it gets distributed in the world. Because, again, part of me was the accumulation of this. And that was most exciting. And now to have these works be let back into the world is kind of fun. And again, I have a lot of other artworks, you know. So I think it's interesting for me to see what happens with this, but I know they're important. I know they'll find great homes. I know there are many museums who are interested in these, and they're kind of rare. So I'm excited about this, and I'm not sad about them leaving me. I think it's okay.
It's interesting. I'm trying to put myself in your feet, in your shoes, and saying goodbye to something you've had for so long. Interesting.
It's like an old suit.
Ooh. Yeah,
You
no,
know?
those I normally don't fit anymore.
Yeah.
That's
But,
different.
But it's okay. It's okay. In fact, you know, the attention and the popularity of these is quite enormous. And I'm really happy about this moment. That's
Cool.
going to happen on Thursday. Yeah, really happy.
Well, I have no doubt it's going to be a huge success. The buzz is incredible. I feel like the algorithms on my social media, that's all they're feeding me is like feeds of this sale, which is great. So let's go into your other passion project, which is the art car series. By the way, I just wanted to put this slide up here. This is a list of the current cars that he has in his collection, as well as some that are commissioned currently that are in the works, currently in production, as it says, all the asterisks, right? How many
Yeah.
is that, Larry?
It's closing in on 60.
And this project for you, Art Cars, came about? How?
So it happened here in Miami, actually. So I'm not a car person, really.
By the way, do you have a driver's license?
No, I don't drive.
He's a real New Yorker. He's a real New Yorker. He's got 60-plus art cars and no driver's license. By the way, I didn't have my license for 18 years. I lived in New York. I didn't have my license for 18 years. I moved to Miami, and then I was like, I think I might need a license. But go ahead, please.
So this happened because I happened to have a Keith Haring car and a Kenny Scharf car, another artist that I really like and collected. So I lent these two cars to a show in Miami at Art Basel called Piston Heads. And that was in 2013. And that was organized by Adam Linderman, Venus over Manhattan, who basically changed my life. Because of Adam, because of walking into the show where I saw my two cars, I said, oh, this is such a cool idea in terms of art cars. So he made it possible for me to get a Damien Hirst car, a Richard Prince car, a César car, Jonas Wood, and others. And that was a turning point in terms of another compulsion, another collecting journey that is ongoing right now. That car is at the Brand Foundation in New York City right now at the Kenny Scharf show. And it opened up around a week ago. But, you know, cars and pop culture and cars as canvas, artistic expression with cars is so interesting to me. That was done, we took that picture 10 days ago. That's Quavo from the Migos. He came by and he did some videos and he went crazy on this Keith Haring car. And,
by the way, this might be a good segue to quickly talk about sort of CART. CART for you is, CART department is a platform, right, for the intersection of art, pop culture,
and cars.
And cars, right?
Yeah.
And you're interested in sort of all of those three kind of coming together. And this is sort of two of the three, if not all three, right?
Yeah.
With Quavo and the Keith Haring and cars. I would say it's the three.
So yeah, so CART department is not art car collection. CART department is, I think, an area that's happening is that intersection. And so I'm kind of interested in that in terms of a platform, a magazine, in terms of those new audiences. I mean, look, LVMH just spent $100 million on F1. I mean, that's a little different, but that's going to, you know, change many, many things. Luxury in cars and you know, Mercedes now does art cars or culture cars. BMW has an amazing collection of 20 art cars. They celebrate their 50th anniversary next year. Mm-hmm. And
they're the founders, right? BMW is really
the art car collection.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Yes, it's 50 years ago they started. And this bus, Barbara Kruger, we did that. I did a project with Performer, not for profit, and this project's interesting. It was basically Barbara Kruger's Supreme took Barbara Kruger's logo and created the Supreme logo.
Right.
So this was an FU to Supreme, and Barbara had created skateboards and hoodies and shirts and did a drop. We did this bus downtown, and we had a store. It was like a not-for-profit project, and I ended up with the bus as a result of this.
Wait, this isn't in front of the Supreme store, is it? That would have been great.
This is in front of Stadium Goods.
Okay.
Downtown, not the Supreme store.
That would have been great. Damien Hirst, Dot Series.
That came from Piston Heads. That came from Adam. I find that a really important car. It's not, and these artists, I wouldn't be collecting these artists independently. I mean, some I like. It's more about the aggregation of the collection and what it would look like in the future. So I'm making this collection for 50 years from now. So when we're not here or we are here, they mean something, and it was a time. And that's part of that's the aggregation concept right now.
Richard Prince.
Richard Prince, yeah. So yeah, Ugo made this for me. Ugo Rondinu. I think he has a piece in front of
in front of the Bass, in front of the Bass. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's a great person. Dan Cole and Nate Lohman.
Yep.
This car is really cool. This now is at LVMH Foundation, Sylvia Fleury. That car is nail polish, Givenchy nail polish full. And
It's a lot of nail polish.
a lot of nail polish, but that's a
Boy.
highlight. That's in the pop show in Paris right now. César.
Let me ask you, so
Yeah.
how many cars do you currently have on commission, and how long does the average car commission take to
It
produce?
varies, but it seems like a good year. Sometimes it could happen quickly. Carmen Herrera's car, taking forever.
And she's no longer with us,
She
right?
died at 106 years old. Has to do who's making it and the care that we need to make it.
But Carmen Herrera, in my humble opinion, is a minimalist artist whose work is pretty straightforward to do a car. It's not like a Kenny Scharf or this, for example. Why does it take so long?
Because we bought a 62 Lincoln, 62 Lincoln, and the approach to make that car was take the whole car apart versus just paint it. So the creation of that car is being done really carefully versus just like, paint the car half and half, black and white.
Okay.
Micheline Thomas is making a car now, and that's a Bentley. That's taking a few minutes. She'll be embellishing it with diamonds and rhinestones.
I could see that.
It's taking some time. Nina Chanel Abney is making a car. That's going to go pretty much quickly. Marina Abramovic made a great bus for me, and that may have been 4 or 5 months with videos and sound, and that's a really cool thing.
Give me your top 3 wish list of artists that you haven't gotten yet to do a car, but you would love. And by the way, let's not limit it to artists, because I think maybe pop culture icons.
Yeah.
I think does that interest you?
Yeah, artists. I like Ed Ruscha,
Sure.
and I saw him 2 weeks ago. We went to Kenny Scharf's opening. We talked about it, but
Still working on him?
He'd be thinking about it.
Okay.
I think Jeff Koons would be interesting. And I have Jenny Holzer, I have Barbara Kruger. I would like another strong woman artist. Maybe Kara Walker would be interesting.
Oh, that'd be
for me.
great. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Ai Weiwei.
So we did 2 Ai Weiwei cars. That was a sculpture. He did a full car of Legos as part of a project that's, it's head to toe Legos.
Zaha, who
Yeah, I was lucky to get that from a friend of mine, Kenny,
what year is this? 2007?
2007.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm trying to broaden the collection to include some other, types of creative categories. Zaha is one of them, one category of architecture, and then music is interesting. I was able to pick up the Otis car, which is Jay-Z and Kanye.
Do we have a photo
Oh,
of that?
before we go there, that's Micheline's, that's the base of Micheline's car. And she's pretty awesome. And going back to music, so Pharrell Williams, I have a bunch of his cars, and Quavo did a car. But these are just interested icons of our time, different than art cars. So that's a separate, because one idea for the cars is to create an attraction where people would go and see cars and the interpretation of the artist, and learn about art through cars. And I feel that's interesting, learn about culture through cars. And that to me is interesting to bring in new audiences.
Well, cars are such an integral part of Americana, right? And I think cars are something that has been articulated in many different art forms, whether it's sculpture, whether it's photography, whether it's paintings. It has really resonated throughout all different art mediums in many different ways, and I think that's something that would absolutely resonate. Again, going back to your museum concept, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interrelated topics here. Going back to the one prior to this, so I decided to include Middle Eastern artists now because I think there's a home for this in the Middle East, and with the Middle East you do need to include Middle Eastern artists, and they really want a global, they want their artists included. This artist, Mohanad Shono, really important artist. This is quite big for my collection, so we're working on a concept, but this has to do with water and gas and oil and gas and that relationship. But he's one of the leading artists of Saudi. Esther is the first BMW car, the first woman that BMW commissioned.
This was
And
2017?
Yeah, this is not the BMW, it's
Okay.
another.
Right.
It's a Honda, but she's an amazing woman. She's 89, she's South African. She's my tip of the day, is Esther,
There she is.
because she's really important and she's not expensive. And I feel there's a certain type of confidence I have in someone like that, with that age and with that history,
Sure.
in terms of making those decisions. But I'm really not buying art anymore, but Esther's really an important woman, important artist. I think she's going to have some works at Art Basel. A couple of the galleries are showing her.
Cool. Before we get into the Q&A part, because we'd love to engage you all and have some questions from you, how about we go back and show a quick video? By the way, does anyone have any questions? Why don't we do it regarding the art cars that before we go into the last video? Anyone want to ask any questions? Please. Hold on.
Larry, could you just go a little into how the Keith Haring subway works were made? Because I don't think people understood where and how they were created.
Thank you. Keith went to the subways. Guangxi, the amazing photographer friend, rest in peace, filmed many of them. He just saw the blank advertising boards and paper in the subways and decided to use those surfaces to create his language and start to get New Yorkers familiar with what his work's about. So he used to paint all hours of the night. Usually took him around 30 seconds to a minute to do a panel, and he moved on. He was arrested many times. And soon these were noticed, and then soon people took them off. And I know I tried to take one off myself, but I kind of ruined it. I kind of ripped it. So I said, to hell with that. But I did realize how important they were. Sometimes things that are right in front of you, in your face, is important. And it's about acting on things. So buying these or accumulating them, for me, didn't feel risky, it felt right. Buying Basquiat notebooks felt right. Collecting Weiwei felt right. So it's about your intuition, your vision, but you need passion in the mix, or else you might as well stay home. So it's all these elements that help me pursue the buying and the accumulation of art when I was doing that in such an aggressive way. Cars now has taken over a little bit of that, the commissioning of cars and accumulation of this collection. That feels kind of just right for now. Better than chasing artists and things that's not that interesting to me. Because I would just buy the Keith Haring subway drawings again. That for me is something that's just as valid as it was years back when I did start to buy those.
Sure. In the back, I think we have an online question.
Yes, a member of our online audience, Hassan, asks, do you feel like the proliferation of car culture is also attributed to Formula One? And if so, do you ever envision having an F1 car as part of your collection?
Yes, it's part of the conversation. And I think F1, the audiences, are exactly the audiences that I'll be aiming to reach with art cars or formula cars that can be painted. But, you know, there's not that much body room on formula cars. There's not much of a surface. We are invited now to lend maybe 8 or 10 cars to Saudi in April, so we're working on that. But I think there's a direct correlation with F1 and popularity, and for me it's about integrating that with art. Last year when I went to F1 in Vegas, what turned me on was the Murakami-Hamilton collaboration, and that was interesting, and seeing all those audiences. This year you have Hamilton and Tyler the Creator doing some collaborations, but the whole F1 area and the growth of that sport and motorsports is really interesting. And
Can I take this opportunity just quickly to talk about Zoe? Where are you? Put your hand up. Zoe, one of our members, and Spring, I think are working on a super interesting project. Zoe is a tech entrepreneur who, on the side, likes to race, right? She's an accomplished race car driver, and she is going to be doing, her and Spring are doing the first women's racing team that will be racing in a 24 hours race in Saudi Arabia, which when you think about it, and by the way, her car will be designed by also Micheline Thomas. So a female woman's artist is going to be designing a car for a female race team to drive in a race in a country where not that long ago, very recently, women couldn't drive. So the concept of that, I think, is super interesting and kind of taking it to the next level. Zoe, do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. I think this is on. Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe Berry, and this is Spring. And together we co-founded something called DART Car, which stands for Driven Artist Racing Team. And when I started racing cars, 1.5% of licensed motor sports professionals were women. There's another co-driver with us who's another co-founder. When she started racing, only 0.5% of race car drivers were women. Today, with all the efforts of F1 and F1 Academy, the number is 4%. 4% of all licensed motorsports drivers are women. That is the same number as women artists represented at auction, which is also 4%. And women's artwork typically goes for a fraction of what male artwork goes for, and women pilots typically make less money, even though women race car drivers are the most sponsorable athlete. Race car driving is having a moment, women in race car driving are having a moment, and yet we take so much more risk and get so much less money. So the idea for us with the Driven Artist Racing Team is to basically highlight this discrepancy between female artists and female race car drivers and create race cars that we commission, and we pay a female artist to do that so they make money. This is not a charitable endeavor. The endeavor is to actually help women artists make money and help women race car drivers have their racing funded. So, Larry, I'm sure we'll talk more.
Love that. Love what you're doing. And I love the context of your first race is going to be in a country that just would not allow female women to drive very recently. So I think all of that put together in that context is incredibly interesting. Next question, please. Olga.
Thank you, Larry. Has an artist ever declined to collaborate on an art car with you? And I guess the second question is, what do you think of artists that don't participate in sort of the, sponsorships, the watches, the, Louis Vuitton bag collaborations? I don't know how many of them still exist, but certainly it's a last 20 years, there's been an uptick. You didn't have Keith Haring or Basquiat doing an AP watch. So I guess it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that.
well, the first question, sure, I'm working on Ed Ruscha. The record for artists saying they want to do that is pretty good. I'm pretty careful who I'm asking these days. I'm turning down artists. William Kentridge turned me down. So there are a number. Kara Walker, no, she didn't turn me down yet. She turned down the ISM book, actually, but I think she'll come around. Yeah, there's some artists, but I'm just trying to be careful because I just want to have a good collection. But over time, I'm getting, I think, the artists I want. And, you know, trying to find cars that exist in the market is a little more difficult, but they also exist in terms of cars that have been done. So that's another type of acquisition. The second question, rephrase it again?
I guess, what do you think of artists that decline participating in sort of the capitalistic, luxury goods, watches, et cetera,
Brand
collaborative
collaborations.
efforts, combining their art with all of those things?
Well, I think, artists have to be discerning about what they agree to take money for, number one. I think, of course, it's no problem. It's their decision, but what I've seen is that the right collaborations really expand the communication and the artwork of the artists. So in terms of reaching new audiences via commercial properties and commercial products. So I think that's okay, but if the artists get a little too silly, that could be damaging. But basically, I think a lot of artists' popularity now, in terms of the mass public that do not collect art, that know about them, is quite interesting. I mean, Andy Warhol was one of the originators of that. Keith Haring with the Pop Shop, again, was one of the originators of that. But I think it's okay, but I think it's up the artist's choice, because some artists are purists. I mean, I'm not sure I could think of many artists that are purists these days. Maybe some of the dead ones, but I don't know about but I'm not sure.
Next question.
I actually have a question. Have you ever been approached by a car manufacturer or a car company about doing some sort of collaboration or project together?
Mercedes is very interested in working on CART. BMW is very interested now. Not so much in cars, but in terms of expanding what they do and using other forms of collaborators to do that. Because it's a big world, and I think creating the right environment for some of these brands and others to promote their ability to reach new audiences with cars and culture, that's sort of interesting. In fact, this weekend in LA, I'm lending for the first time 10 cars to the LA car show, with this company called West Coast Customs, who
Which
did the first.
If you've ever seen Pimp My Ride.
So we're going to have, Damien Hirst, Keith Haring with Travis Scott's car, Justin Bieber's Rolls Royce, and things like that. And that's sort of interesting, combining in these two types of cars, which is what CART's about. So that's new for me, and hope that answers the question.
By the way, I think part of why Mercedes wants to work with you is because you have the Jay-Z, Kanye, Otis car, which they totally redid. Not total, but redid. That doesn't look like a Maybach anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't think Maybach was too happy at the time, because that car cost around $350,000, and those guys
ripped off the doors,
destroyed the car, and created a new car that became an icon.
It was one of the Jay-Z's videos, or Kanye's video, I can't remember which.
It's called Otis.
Yeah.
And it's very popular.
Last question. In the back.
Thank you. What do you think of Daniel Arsham and what he's doing with his vehicles? I find it incredibly interesting. I'd like your opinion too.
I think Daniel's really smart. I think he has the right attitude. I think he's very innovative. Daniel's my partner in China, actually. And I have a Ferrari from Daniel, full of crystals. That will be in LA. I think he really is on the cutting edge of connecting car culture to different audiences. And he sort of paves the way for people like myself to do things. So I'm very encouraging with what Daniel does.
Well, with that said, I want to thank Larry. I want to wish you, I'm sure this Sotheby's sale on Thursday is going to be a smashing success. I know that you have a lot more in the vault. I hope that you'll come back and share a lot more of the goods in the vaults and what's around the corner, because you're always working on what's next. So I'm excited for you publishing. I'm excited for you on the curatorial part, your whole museum concept, which we only sort of touched upon. I have no doubt that when we have this conversation next time, there'll be a lot more to talk about regarding that. And I just wish you continued success.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, buddy. Oh, and we're going to leave you with one last little video.
These panels tell a story about New York City in the 1980s. It's sort of an origin story of what we now call street art. Keith noticed an empty subway panel with very black matte paper, and he got the idea to get some chalk and do a drawing. That idea took on a life of its own. For the next 5 years, he would be doing drawings all over the subway on those black empty panels.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, buddy.
That was great.
It's great. Awesome.